A mother thousands of miles away, watching through a screen as her youngest daughter is lowered into the ground. What you're about to hear is going to change everything you thought you knew about family, about sacrifice, and about the brutal reality that millions of Kenya living abroad face every day. On November 20th of 2025, Kenya buried one of the most beloved gospel voices, Bayo, the woman behind the legendary anthem 11th Hour, the song that carried millions through the darkest moments. But here is where the story takes a devastating turn. Her mother, Joyce Mbugua, the woman who raised her, who introduced her to God as a little girl, was nowhere to be found. Thousands gathered at Ndumberi Stadium. Politicians arrived in convoys. Fellow musicians wept openly, but the one person who should have been there was missing. And when Kenyans discovered why, tensions exploded, tempers flared, and a national conversation erupted that nobody was prepared for. This is the heartbreaking truth behind Bayo's mother's absence, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you will never look at immigration the same way again. But first, let me take you back to where it all began. Born Beatrice Mbugua in a humble village in Kiambu County, Bayo was the youngest of 8 children, growing up in the kind of poverty that most of us can only imagine. Life was not kind to young Betty. Financial struggles forced her to drop out of school in Form 2. And can you picture that? A teenage girl, dreams crushed and forced to work as a house help just to survive. But now, this is where you need to pay very close attention, because without understanding this bond, you cannot possibly grasp the tragedy of what happened next. Joyce Mbugua was not just Bayo's mother. She was her foundation, her spiritual guide, her reason for becoming the woman of faith that Kenya came to love. In her own words, Joyce revealed that she introduced Bayo to God when she was just a small girl. By the age of 12 years, young Betty was already leading others in worship and fasting. Think about that, a 12-year-old girl guiding grown adults into spiritual practices. Joyce recognized something divine in her daughter, a calling that would eventually touch millions of lives. Bayo took her mother from the village and moved her to Runda Estate, one of Nairobi's most affluent neighborhoods. She insisted on providing for her mother, ensuring she lacked nothing. Joyce later recalled, "You brought me from the village to Runda Estate, where I stayed with you until I asked to return home." But Betty did not stop there. She built her mother a modern house. She ensured that Joyce had comfort in her old age. And then, in what would become a decision with devastating consequences, Bayo encouraged her mother to relocate to the United States. It seemed like the ultimate gift, a mother being sent to America by her successful daughter, a chance for Joyce to experience a new life, to visit other family members, to enjoy her golden years in peace. Nobody, and I mean nobody, could have predicted what would have happened next, because sometimes the greatest gifts come with the highest of costs. On November 20th of 2025, Kenya prepared to say goodbye to one of its brightest stars. The funeral service was held at Ndumberi Stadium, and the turnout was extraordinary. Deputy President Kindiki Kithure arrived along with former cabinet secretaries Moses Kuria and former presidential candidate George Wajakoya, members of parliament, and countless celebrities. The presidency donated a staggering 10 million Kenyan shillings to a trust fund for Bayo's children. Fellow gospel musicians filled the stadium. Now, let me tell you exactly what happened and why millions of Kenyans are still talking about this. Joyce Mbugua, who is Bayo's mom, lives in the United States. She relocated there, encouraged by her own daughter, Bayo, to be closer to other family members and to enjoy her retirement. But here is the crucial twist. Her visa had expired, and under American immigration law, if Joyce left the country with an expired visa, she will not be allowed back in. The strict regulations meant she faced a devastating choice: travel to Kenya to bury her daughter and potentially be barred from returning to the United States for 3 to 10 years, or stay in America, miss her daughter's burial, and hope for a future where she could return legally. It is a decision no mother should ever have to make. American immigration rules are unforgiving. If you overstay your visa and leave the country, you trigger what is called unlawful presence. Stay beyond 180 days and you're barred from re-entry for 3 years. stay beyond 1 year and the bar extends to 10 years. Joyce had no choice. Instead of physically attending, she participated in a prayer service held in Seattle with the Kenyan community there. She sent a heartfelt tribute that was read aloud during the burial service and requiem mass in Kiambu. In that tribute, Joyce, who is Betty Bayo's mother, poured out her heart. She recalled how Betty Bayo loved the Lord from a young age, how her daughter had transformed her life, how Betty Bayo's short life had beautified her own existence more than she could ever imagine. She spoke directly to her grandchildren, Sky and Danny, promising that even though they cannot replace their mother's place in her heart, when she sees them, she remembers the bond they shared. Videos emerged online showing Joyce at the Seattle Memorial being helped to the pulpit, weeping uncontrollably, surrounded by fellow Kenyans who tried to comfort her in her darkest hour. And yet, despite understanding the circumstances, many Kenyans online were not satisfied with this. The internet has erupted with comments flooding in across social media. Some demand answers, some expressed sympathy, some questioned whether there was truly no way for Joyce to travel. The debates became heated, tempers rose high as Kenyans tried to understand how a mother could miss her own child's burial. But here is what many people failed to realize. Joyce Mbugua's situation is not unique. Millions of Kenyans living abroad face the exact same impossible choices every single day. When a parent dies, they cannot attend the funeral. When a sibling gets married, they watch through a screen. When children are born, they meet through video calls. The American dream, the European opportunity, the Gulf job, these come with visible chains that bind people to foreign lands, separated from the ones they love most. Immigration laws do not care about grief. They do not make exceptions for funerals. They do not bend for mothers burying their daughters. And so Joyce Mbugua became a symbol, a painful reminder of the sacrifice that comes with migration. Her absence was not abandonment, it was imprisonment. She was trapped not by the walls but by paperwork, by regulations and by a system designed without compassion. Bishop Michael Wanderi acknowledged her absence during the service. He facilitated her tribute being shared. The family understood. Betty Bayo's brothers, all 6 of them, understood why their mom could not make it to such an event. Because they knew something that critics online did not. Joyce would have given anything to be with her. She would have walked across the ocean if she could, but the laws of men stood between her and her daughter's grave. So when Betty Bayo was lowered into the ground at her Mugumo estate home, surrounded by only 50 close family members and friends with tight security ensuring privacy, a mother in Seattle whispered her final goodbyes through tears. At exactly 5:20 p.m. East African time, Betty Bayo's body was laid to rest. Her life may have been short, just 36 years, but her impact was immeasurable. She rose from the poverty to become a gospel icon. She survived scandal and rebuilt her own life. She built love fiercely and gave generously. She raised her children in a blended family with grace. She touched millions with her voice and her testimony. And even in her death, she sparked a conversation that Kenya needed to have about family, about immigration, and about the invisible cost of chasing better opportunities abroad. Joyce Mbugua lost her daughter, but she did not lose her forever, because every time 11th hour plays in a church, every time a Kenyan finds hopes in the darkest moments through Betty's music, Joyce's legacy lives on through the daughter she raised. To all the mothers separated from their children by borders and visas, and to all the families torn apart by immigration rules, to everyone who has ever watched a funeral through a screen because they could not be there in person, Betty Bayo's story is your story, and you are not alone. If this video moved you, if you understand the pain of families separated by distance and immigration, drop a comment below sharing your experience. Like this video if you believe Betty Bayo's legacy should live on. Subscribe if you want more stories like this, or even more stories that matter, stories that go beyond the headlines to reveal the human truth underneath. And share this video because somewhere out there, another mother is facing the same impossible choice, and she needs to know she is not alone. Let's catch up on my next video as you get to know what is happening on the next Celebrity Drama Files.